Hey everyone, it's the day after Thanksgiving and I'm back with this recipe for one of my favorites, the Chestnut Praline Latte. I'm actually drinking the latte I made in this video right now, so I'm ready to go. Let's get started. We're going to start out by making the chestnut praline syrup. And it's great because this recipe makes almost 2 cups of syrup, which is enough to make 16 lattes. Any extra syrup you don't use immediately will stay fresh for 2 to 3 weeks in the fridge. For step 1, we'll need 8 to 9 chestnuts and a half cup of chopped pecans. You can find chopped pecans at any local grocery store, and I found a 3-ounce pack of peeled chestnuts on Amazon that was the perfect size. Grab a medium saucepan and set your stovetop temperature halfway between low and medium heat. Then add in your half cup of chopped pecans. Next, add in the 8 or 9 peeled chestnuts. We get to roast the nuts for around 5 minutes. It's important to keep stirring to make sure everything heats evenly. This is around 1.5 minutes into the heating process, and the nuts all look the same, but I can start to feel the heat coming off the saucepan. I went ahead and sped this part of the video up, but we could definitely smell the pecans roasting by the time we hit 5 minutes. And then it's time to add in the next ingredients. These are the ingredients that give the syrup its sweetness and power. They are 1.5 cups of water, 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, and 3/4 cup of brown sugar. Once you have these ingredients, carefully pour them into the medium saucepan. But go slow because, as you can see, the saucepan is very hot. First add in the water, then add in the brown sugar and white sugar. I went ahead and had my wife do this part because she's much better at not making a mess. Teamwork makes the dream work. Once you add in all those ingredients, make sure to stir everything together. Then, increase your stovetop to medium heat to bring the saucepan to a boil. The saucepan started to heat up rather quickly, and after a few minutes it looked like this. And 7 minutes in, it started to boil. At this point, it's time to reduce the heat to low. Simmer the mixture for 10 minutes. Reducing your stovetop to low heat should set it to the perfect simmering temperature. Just make sure to stir it occasionally to keep it heating evenly. Halfway through it smelled great and the nuts looked a little darker. As we neared the 10-minute mark, the steam started fogging up my camera lens. After 10 minutes of simmering, it's time to turn off the stovetop. And I carefully removed the entire saucepan from heat. At this point, I began to get super excited. Because it smelled so good, I knew it was going to taste great. But I still had one very important ingredient left. But first, it's time for our quick goose fact. Did you know that geese use a variety of calls to communicate with each other, including mating calls, alarm calls, and calls to warn the flock of danger? Now that's what I call open communication. And now, back to our chestnut praline syrup. For the final ingredient, we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I absolutely love vanilla, so I know how important this step is. Add your vanilla extract to the saucepan. But be careful because it'll still be really hot. Stir everything together to make sure it's mixed really well. Now that we've added everything in, we're down to the final big step. Once we're done with this, we'll be ready to enjoy our delicious chestnut praline syrup. All we need to do is strain out the large pieces of nuts. And lucky for you, I tested a couple methods. You can either scoop out the large pieces with a big spoon, or you can strain out all the particles with a cheesecloth. I was actually surprised at how well the scooping method worked. But it did leave behind some smaller pieces. Whichever method you use, you can set aside the sweet nuts and use them in ice cream, yogurt, or even cereal. And this is what the syrup looked like without using a cheesecloth. You can see some of the smaller pieces are still in there. So then I ran the syrup through a 90-grade cheesecloth. Here's what it was able to strain out. Whichever method you end up going with, or even if you choose both, you're going to end up with delicious syrup. Now that our syrup is ready, we can put it in an airtight container, and anything we don't use today can be refrigerated and will stay fresh for 2 to 3 weeks. Now, let's use the syrup we just made to create a chestnut praline latte. But before we switch over, it's time for our quick goose fact. Did you know that according to legend, geese once saved Rome? The Gauls tried to attack, but the loud geese alerted the Romans and they were able to fend off the attack. So the next time you want to upgrade your security system, just buy a goose. And now, back to the latte. To make the latte, we'll need 2 to 3 tablespoons of the syrup we just made, plus a double shot of espresso. We'll also need 1 cup of milk or a non-dairy alternative, and the whipped cream is optional. Begin by placing 2 to 3 tablespoons of the chestnut praline syrup that we just made into your chosen mug. If you're unsure, I would start with 2 tablespoons. That's how many I use, and you can always add another tablespoon in at the end if you want it sweeter. Next, it's time to brew a double shot of espresso. Don't worry, I sped this part up. I think it looks a lot cooler sped up anyway. Alright, now we have our double shot of espresso. It's time to pour it into our chosen mug, right on top of the syrup. Just try not to make a mess like I did. It's finally time for the milk. We need 1 cup or 8 ounces, and it can be milk or a non-dairy alternative. Heat the milk up in a milk steamer or frother if you have one. If not, you can heat it on a stovetop with a small saucepan. Heat it until it's steaming, but not boiling. Go ahead and pour your steamed milk into your chosen mug. This is where it starts to look great. Stir everything together so the flavors are all mixed. And now you have a finished chestnut praline latte, but I recommend one more ingredient. Add some whipped cream on top to finish everything off. And now the chestnut praline latte is really ready to enjoy. This recipe really has become one of my favorites. I've already had way too many of these lattes. And I'm sure you'll love them as well. It's a perfect complement to the holiday season. And now that we've mastered this recipe, it's time to learn another festive option. Check out our cinnamon dolce latte. See you there.